Hey, Internet.
Classic games?
Welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction.
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. IssuesETC.org.
And it's time for... This week, we got sort of like a meshed up, hashed together, half Greek Tuesday, half AskDaPastor, because we had an email come in from somebody asking a question that just happened to be about the text that is assigned for this coming week. Wow, cool, it's like relevant and stuff, right? So I'm going to read the question, and then we're going to dig into the text, and we're going to try to come back to the question after we've dealt with the text a little bit. Yo? Alright, here we go. Pastor Fisk, I would like to get a Lutheran perspective on Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 33, and the cost of discipleship. I've recently come away from the Baptist denomination. You know there's more than one, right? Yeah, so, and then there's ones that aren't too, but that's alright. So, Baptist tradition, yeah? After being introduced to Lutheran teaching and law and gospel, and the theology of the cross versus the theology of glory by some dear Lutheran brothers. God bless them. The local church where I attend was into lordship salvation and very heavy-handed with the law, adding recently David Platt's material on being a radical disciple. Not as familiar with lordship salvation myself, but we'll see if we can work around that. So how would you respond when they bring up Luke chapter 14? The idea that obedience proves our justification and not just faith. That obedience proves our justification. So it's like the fruit of what? Perfect obedience must be there in order for your justification to be valid? If you are not willing to give it all up, as of course dictated by the local congregation and their list of rules, then you can't be a true Christian. The first thing we need to address in that is the question of, well, what does Luke chapter 14 actually say? Is Luke chapter 14 about the cost of discipleship, i.e., what you need to do if you want to be a Christian? Or is it about the cost of discipleship, i.e., what it actually costs to be made Christian? Those are really different questions. I mean, and even that, is it even about the cost of discipleship at all? Is the word cost used in the text of Luke chapter 13? And in what way? After that, then we can go back and we can address the question of so-called works righteousness salvation, which I would say very much is what's being taught by anybody who says to you that obedience proves, like, makes factual, right? Even works your justification or your salvation. I mean, I just sent an email today to a good friend of mine, Pastor Jeff Reese. He's on the We team. You guys can email him and tell him to do this because it'd be really valuable. Telling him that the book that I want to read right now, that I want someone else to write, because I don't know it, I need to learn it. I want a book that takes evangelical American theology and lines it up point by point with medieval Roman Catholic theology and strips away the veneer of the bells and the whistles and the praise bands and all that stuff. Get rid of all the outside covering and just look at what they actually believe, because I'm pretty convinced what you're going to find is they the exact same thing, with the exception of, you're going to ask, this is my body, the Romans of course are going to say yes it is, and the Baptists are going to say no it's not. But when you're talking about what salvation actually is, how it's accomplished, it's going to be right down the line, the same ladder that you're climbing of obedience, of personal righteousness being the thing which is the proof of salvation, as opposed to, say, the personal righteousness of Jesus on the cross dying for your sins being the proof of salvation to you. We can also ask this question a different way. So if it is my obedience that proves my salvation, what level of obedience? At what point do I draw this line? Because, well, I'll just start with the first commandment. You shall have no other gods, meaning I should fear and love and trust in God above all things. My obedience level on that, I mean, as much as I really would like it to be perfect, it's not. I don't fear and love and trust in God above all things. I fear many things that aren't God, and I trust many things that aren't God, and I put my hopes in many things that aren't God, and I certainly love, this world way too much, and so, what, I'm not saved? Really? Jesus saved me? No, you are a sinner. I mean, what is Christianity at this point? I mean, it's just go be a Muslim. I mean, really, it's the same thing. That salvation is a matter of obedience, a matter of works. So if you're going to say obedience proves your justification, just recognize, by the laws of the scripture that are given to you, the defining things about what good and evil are, nobody's justified. Hey, wait, does Paul say that by works of the law no one will be? It's almost like, maybe he isn't just talking about before you get saved, but he's actually talking about an inherent, ongoing, frustrating reality of being a sinner even while one believes. Did that make any sense? I don't know. Let's get into the text though, because we're going to find some good stuff today, and you're going to find that a lot of the arguments that you have run into about Luke chapter 14 are based on assumptions from English translations that aren't necessarily bringing across, what the text says. Yeah? That's not that they're wrong, it's just that you're reading too much into the English words and not letting the deeper context explain what the English words ought to mean, because they're fine. Yeah? Now remember that we're in this movement in Luke that really goes all the way back to 13 verse 1, where Jesus is like on a tirade against everybody who's talking to him, right? He's been emphasizing the answer to this question, who deserves to die, being you. And everyone who comes to him is like, hey, Jesus, you're great. He's like, well, you're not. Well, those who are saved be few. Well, you'll be lucky if you are. You guys are like a fig tree that doesn't bear any fruit, and your time is running out before I cut you down and throw you away. There was a man who gave a great feast, and he invited everybody who was near him to come, and they all said, no, that's you. And the wrath of God is being stirred up against this. Now, amazingly, even though the Pharisees are increasingly kind of at heads with him about this and trying to get him to stop talking, and he's just like having none of it, the crowds still are just amazed. They're being drawn to this teaching. He's not exactly telling them that they get it, but they're continually listening to this anyway. What he's doing is he's making a journey to Jerusalem. He's got his face turned toward Jerusalem, and he said these things like, I must go on my way today and tomorrow, the third day I finish my course, because nobody can die apart from Jerusalem. And you're saying I'm going to die? Well, that's where I'm going. I'm going there to die for you. You're going to say, blessed is the one who brings the name of the Lord. That's me as I go in, and I will complete my work there. All right, so great crowds are continuing to accompany him, to follow him, in spite of the fact that he has continued to condemn them and tell them that none of them are worthy of salvation, but that the kingdom's going to be taken from them and given to somebody else. Because, they think he's a trifle. They think he's kind of a silly circus, a happy demon casting out guy, yeah? They haven't understood his words about the cross, and that's what's gonna start being talked about. Verse 26 of chapter 14. He says, if anyone does not come to me and, put it in parentheses, hate, misse in the Greek miseo, his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, kind of key that, he cannot be my methetes, common word for disciple, although that word does mean different things in different books of the Bible. Matthew and John particularly reserve the word disciple for the 12. Luke tends to use this word more to describe what Matthew and John would have called followers. So, one cannot be a Christian. We can understand that word disciple to mean here. One cannot be a Christian unless one hates mother, father, sister, brother, all this thing. So right there, turn around on your Baptist friend and say, so, you hate your parents? Like really, like hate them, like spit on them, like want to kill them. Yeah, I hate them, rage. Well, you're not a Christian. That's what the text says. That's what the Bible says. See, it says it. Oh, wait, you got to interpret that using its context to understand what it really means, right? Right. So that's what we're going to do. So, starting with miseo, hate, recognizing that the word hate in English carries with it sort of an emotive reality, this feeling we have toward things we don't like. That's not necessarily what Hebrew or even Greek culture would have understood the word hate as. It would have been more as in distancing or recognizing the lack of value in something, which could in fact be evil, like something that is actually unclean. I mean, but if you really want to compare it to us, giving it something that we in our culture would recognize is not valuable, right? You would have to say something like, I hate being in the sun without sunscreen on, right? I know that this is not good, yeah? But that doesn't necessarily carry with it this like emotive thing, like when I go out without sunscreen, I'm like, ooh, I hate this so much. I mean, there's a difference there. There also is some concept of shame. So within especially the Hebrew culture, they did disdain, they did reject, move away from anything which would bring shame to the community by breaking the Levitical codes and so forth. That's not really necessarily a bad thing. But if we wanted to translate this, as the weight of the Greek is carrying it, it is not that you must like have these emotive negative feelings towards your parents. I mean, this is the same Jesus who says, love your enemy, right? Love your enemy, hate your parents. Careful there. It's more along the lines of renouncing your heritage in the earthly realm. Remember how he's just told all these people that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as their forefathers cannot save them. Their bloodline cannot save them. And so, if you want to be under Jesus, you need to renounce the value of, not first mother, brother, sister, all this, but that final thing he says that sums it all up, your own life. life. And there again, we got a word that can be translated multiple ways and usually is translated multiple ways. Suitcase, often coming across as soul or your spirit, but connected to the old Hebrew word nephesh, which also means soul, but means more than that. It's like a total summary of everything that you are. So here are these crowds saying, hey, Jesus, you're so awesome. We love how you're like giving it to the man. And he's like, if you don't realize you're worthless, you don't know who I am. That's it. That's where he's going with this. You have to renounce who you are, that you bring no value to the equation. Now, let's just for a moment say, so my obedience proves my justification. And you're going to base that on a text which says you bring no value to the equation? I mean, that's the opening line. You bring no value to the equation, so be obedient to prove it. What? I mean, it doesn't fit. And now, especially this next line, oh, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me, Jesus says, cannot be, is not my disciple, is not a Christian. But what does it mean to bear your own cross? The word there, bastadze, and no, I didn't just say a bad word in English. Bastadze means to literally to raise from a lower place to a higher place, to lift up in a sense. Often used to talk about, like, say, they pick up stones to throw them at people. He who does not lift up the cross that belongs to him and who is not therefore coming apisso. It can mean after, but it doesn't necessarily mean like walking behind. It can actually mean in order. Remember this whole first, last, first thing? So who's actually the first? And who do we all need to come after, right? So who's on top? Who's the focus? Who's the answer? Who's the only one that can be obedient? And are you willing to recognize that you need to, well, be crucified? So Jesus turns to all the crowds and he says, if you don't realize that your life is worth nothing, if you do not realize that you deserve to be crucified and get underneath my own righteousness, then you're not a Christian. That's it right there, 26, 27. Boom. Not exactly the way the text is normally interpreted, right? Normally it's like, you need to pick up your cross, so you gotta go find the way you're gonna serve God, because that's what this is all about. It's how you serve God, yeah. Go, so make something up that you need to do, like find your ministry and stuff. It's like, well, is that just recognize, as much as what I just said might be said, well, that's not in the text, I can say right back, well, neither is what you said. So what is the text saying? Jesus is saying that you must disown yourself, that you must die, that you must be behind him, and he's going to die in your place. And now this whole counting the cost thing is going to be an example of that. Is Jesus, the Savior of the world, really so intent on getting everyone to understand how much they have to do to be a Christian? Is that the problem the Pharisees have with Jesus? He's telling people to be too obedient. Or is he challenging their legalistic, stuck in its ways, believing in their own righteousness problem? So when he says, how many of you desiring to build something, a building, a house, it doesn't matter what the thing is, desiring to build something, before you start building it, before you lay any concrete foundation, not that they laid concrete back then, but you get the idea, aren't before you build gonna sit down and add up your pennies to figure out if you have enough pennies to pay for the building? Because if you don't, you're gonna start, you're gonna build like this little bit amount, it's not gonna get finished, and everyone's gonna like scoff at you. Look at the idiot who thought he could do something he was totally unable to do. What king, what ruler, what leader is going to go out to war against an army that is twice his size? Who's going to do that? No one's going to do that. He's going to send an emissary asking for peace before the war comes upon him and totally crushes him. So, and catch verse 33 is there in the English. You don't even need the Greek to see where it's all going. So, any of you who do not renounce all that you have, cannot be my disciple. Are you counting the cost of all the things you need to give up? Are you counting the cost of just how little you are able to build the tower that you want to build? Salvation. Obedience. Just how little you are able to go to war against the God who is coming to destroy you for being an evil person. Because that's what God's doing on the last day. He is coming to destroy everybody and everything for being evil people. Can't you realize this? Can't you count the cost of your sin? Can't you see just how bad it really is? Can't you see just how much you deserve to take up a cross and be hung upon it? How great is salt? Salt's awesome. Salt makes everything taste good if you put on it. I mean, I tell you, I love my dear wife. She brings me a bowl of soup at least once a week with some bread to put in it, and I can't tell you though how many times I say, wife, did you put salt in it? And she says, a little bit. Because she's got this whole, like, I love my wife, this whole postmodern, like, salt's bad for you thing that, like, somehow was ingrained in her. So she's afraid to put more salt in, but so I go grab my salt, I put my salt in the wonderful stew my wife has spent the day making, and just a little salt. It's so good, it's so tasty. How good is salt? But, if I put salt in that soup and it doesn't change the flavor, then it's not salt. And it's not good for anything. What am I gonna do with it? What am I gonna do with salt that isn't salty? There's only one thing to do with salt that isn't salty. Throw it out. So there's only one thing to do with humans who are not good. Throw them out. So count the cost of your sin and ask yourself, are you salty? And the answer Jesus wants you to answer is not, well, I'm getting there. Yeah, I'm gonna get there soon. The answer he wants you to give is, no, I'm not salt. I am worthless. I am salt without saltiness. Gosh, I am a man who cannot fight the war against my own sin and win. I am a man who cannot build a ladder to the heavens and climb it. I am a man who deserves to be crucified for my thoughts, words, and deeds, especially according to the Levitical codes. The stone should be picked up and thrown at me. I am a man who is, and here's the good news then, as I know this, by faith alone, I am a man who hates my own soul. That's a good thing. And this is the amazing thing about Jesus, that he actually can divide soul and spirit, joint and marrow. Like, he comes in to you, the sinner, with his death and resurrection and the good news of how he's done this to justify you in spite of yourself and without any work on your part. And he divides your sinful self from you. He divides you from you so that evil you, fleshly you, inherited from Adam's gonna die still, bury in the ground, never go to heaven, but you are saved. You rise again, a new man born from heaven, washed with Jesus. What's the word for washed again? Oh, baptized. That's right. Yeah, crazy. Hear what I'm saying? So, all right, count the cost of discipleship. This is just it. If you're going to count the cost of discipleship, it is the awareness of your own sin. That's the cost of discipleship. You must be able to see that you are not good enough to prove anything to God or your neighbor. Oh, is that what it's about? It's like totally different than what I thought it was about. So like, it's not about obedience and like how good I have to be. What about all the stuff I did to like be good? Well, if it helped your neighbor, then it was great. Yeah. Like, why are you doing it for you? Then it's not good, is it? Oh, no. But if you're like doing good for your neighbor, it doesn't matter whether or not it gets you anything. It helped them. Yay. Awesome. That's goodness. That's the goodness God does. He does it without getting anything out of it. And this is the big problem then with this whole, if I'm going to use the term rightly, lordship, salvation, again, I don't understand the term, but as you described it, is it makes all of your obedience as a Christian a matter of your own benefit. And so it's not really obedience. It's like self-serving arrogance. Now, would I say that to the Baptist friend who's like, well, Luke 14, what about it? No, what I would say is, what's Luke 14 really about? I'm pretty sure it's about Jesus saying how I need to know that I'm a sinner if I'm going to be a Christian. That before I can come to him, I must understand I come as one who does not deserve to come to him. Before I go through the narrow door, I must understand that I cannot get through the narrow door, but that Jesus must go through the narrow door for me. Before I can go to the wedding feast, I need to know that I'm the guy living in the gutter that isn't supposed to get to the wedding feast. And then my eyes will be open to see what Jesus is doing while he's saying all these words, which is marching toward Jerusalem to finish course, which is to save me by dying for me with the cross that I deserve. And so then I am behind him, that is, under him, that I have taken up faith in my own need to be crucified, and so become one under one who was crucified in my place. Luke chapter 14, verses 25 and following, I think it makes a whole lot of sense, and it's gospel. There's so much gospel. If only the American churches could recover this gospel, I'm pretty convinced we'd stop losing members, but instead we're driving them out the door by beating them over the head with the law God never gave. Now, does this mean the law is bad? No, the law is good. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's something we should strive to do, but not because you're going to get something from it and not because it proves you're a Christian. Jesus proves you're a Christian. Baptism proves you're a Christian. The Lord's Supper proves you're a Christian to you. God is proving it to you, which awakens the faith that actually is capable of loving your neighbor just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Right on. I mean, keep it real, yo. All right, cool. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video and you like the gospel, make sure that you like and share this video and consider joining the Lutheran Ninja Clan. Yeah, I cannot even begin to jump. Hurt my back. I would do a karate kick otherwise. Wait, I'm not a ninja? Join the Lutheran Ninja Clan, make us more capable of bringing out more videos more often, and of course, improving this. Oh, there were some questions like where'd the swords go? They're like right there. And the cool thing about this is that eventually we can like have pictures behind it, but we're still learning how to use the new equipment, yada, yada, yada. So we'll get there. I can't drop it. We'll get there. They're still here, not sharp. That would hurt though. All right, thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Rock on.